Hyundai Tucson Hybrid and Kia Sportage Hybrid. Should you buy either one? That's what we're going to find out. Welcome to Car Help Corner, where we help you, the consumer, master the process of car buying and car ownership. I'm going to review both the Hyundai Tucson Hybrid and the Kia Sportage or Sportage Hybrid and share 5 things that they do much better than their competitors. I'm also going to share another 5 things that they don't do so well, which of the two is the better choice, and whether it even makes sense to consider buying one of these over other hybrid SUVs, like the Toyota RAV4, the Honda CR-V, the Subaru Forester, and others. Now, the main reason why I put these two SUVs together for this video is because they are basically mechanically the same SUV. They share the exact same platform and the exact same drivetrains. So there are going to be a lot of similarities between them. Let's start with the drivetrains. Both of these SUVs come standard with the same naturally aspirated 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine, which comes mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission and a choice of either front wheel or all-wheel drive. This engine is part of Hyundai and Kia's SmartStream engine family, which means it is not the same engine that was affected by all the major engine failures and engine recalls that affected millions of Hyundai and Kia vehicles over the past decade, which is a very good thing. So if you just want to have a conventional gas engine, Hyundai and Kia still give you that option. In any case, over the past week, I've been test driving the hybrid versions, which offer many significant benefits. And that brings us to the first highlight of these SUVs that they both do incredibly well, and that is the hybrid performance. The hybrid system, which uses a 1.6-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that's matched to an electric motor and hybrid battery, produces around 230 horsepower and around 260 pound-feet of torque, which is quite a bit. In fact, the amount of power that you get with these two is quite surprising, more than enough, and that's one of the benefits of having a turbocharged engine. You get tons of low-end torque, which gives you that nice pull off the line that you just don't get with a naturally aspirated engine. And not only are these very powerful SUVs, but the engine is very smooth and refined. You really don't notice the engine turning on and off as you drive, as it goes into electric mode. The hybrid system is very seamless, and the engine is incredibly smooth and quiet even when it does kick on. So overall, the performance and refinement of this engine and hybrid system is really quite good. And that brings us to the second thing that these two SUVs do incredibly well, and that is the overall driving feel. One of the reasons why these two SUVs have such a nice driving feel is the fact that they come with a conventional automatic transmission, as opposed to most other hybrids which have an eCVT setup, which can be a little bit noisy and drony when you accelerate hard. Both the Tucson and the Sportage Hybrid come with a conventional 6-speed automatic transmission, which gives them the driving feel of a regular gas car. And having that conventional transmission, which can change gears, helps keep the engine nice and quiet even when you're accelerating hard, which is really nice. And not only that, but the whole driving experience of these two SUVs, the ride comfort, the way they absorb bumps in the road, the quietness of the interior, and even the handling, they just have a really impressive, well-sorted driving feel. And I have to say, I've just really enjoyed driving them over this past week. They're just very impressive, nice driving vehicles. And that brings us to the third thing that these two do incredibly well, which is the interior design, features, and overall interior space. What's really great about these two is that they come near the top of their class when it comes to interior volume and interior space, and it really shows. You get plenty of room in both the front and back seats. Adults will have absolutely no issue sitting comfortably in either of these. And not only is there plenty of passenger room, but you have a very spacious cargo area with tons of space, whether you have the seats up or folded flat. And what's also really nice is that underneath the cargo floor, you actually get a compact spare tire, which is a feature that you don't find in every other hybrid SUV. And not only are they both very spacious, but the interior design and the interior setup is really well done. And this is an area where both Hyundai and Kia truly excel. In both vehicles, you have this really nice dual screen infotainment system with a digital driver display that's customizable, plus a really good center touchscreen. The graphics, the responsiveness, and the overall user interface of the touchscreen is truly among the very best in class. And not only that, but one thing that both Hyundai and Kia do very well is that they still give you some conventional controls, so you don't have to use the touchscreen for absolutely everything. In the Tucson, you have this control setup with touch controls and conventional buttons and knobs, which is very straightforward and easy to use. In the Kia, however, these controls are nowhere near as well set up because you only have one row of touch controls that you have to toggle back and forth between your climate functions and your sound system functions, which can be rather distracting and frustrating on the move. That being said, both interiors are very well designed for the most part. They also have excellent fit and finish and plenty of useful storage space. And if you're a big feature and tech person, there's definitely a lot to love here because both of these vehicles come loaded with all kinds of features that you don't always see in this class. For example, the top trims of these two come with desirable features like a head-up display, both ventilated and heated front seats, a full panoramic roof with a power shade, and all kinds of desirable safety features. Which brings us to the number 4 thing that both of these vehicles do incredibly well, and that is safety. The safety features that you get in these two is really at the top of the class. You have an excellent highway driving assist, which works incredibly well, and plenty of excellent cameras, including a blind spot camera system and one of the best 360 surround view cameras in the segment. And not only do you get plenty of safety features, but you get excellent safety ratings. The Sportage is rated a top safety pick by the IIHS, and the Tucson is rated even higher, rated a top safety pick plus, which is the highest safety rating that you can get. And that brings us to the number 5 thing that both of these vehicles do incredibly well, and that's offering a lot of choice. It's very rare to find an SUV that gives you a choice of having a conventional, naturally aspirated gas engine, a hybrid drivetrain, and even a plug-in hybrid drivetrain, which is something that you can get on both of these vehicles. The plug-in hybrid basically uses the exact same hybrid system, only with more powerful electric motors and a much larger hybrid battery, which means you get an extra 30 horsepower or so, and when you charge it, it's able to drive around 32 miles or 50 kilometers on electric power. So for someone that has access to charging at home or just really wants to have a plug-in vehicle, it's nice to have that option available. So at the end of the day, there's definitely a lot to like when it comes to these two SUVs. But having said all of that, there are quite a few things that I'm not so sure about and where they do fall behind the competition. Starting with the first one, which is the fuel economy. Now, having lots of power and excellent performance is great, but ultimately the main reason why anyone buys a hybrid is to save money on gas. And unfortunately, that's just something that these two do not do as well as other hybrids. They're both rated to achieve roughly between 35 to 38 miles per gallon, or roughly 6.5 to 7 liters per 100 kilometers. And in the week that I've been testing them, I've been finding that you have to drive them very carefully even to hit those numbers. They're just not as effortlessly fuel efficient as other hybrids are. And I think that ultimately comes down to the way this hybrid system is designed. It basically uses a single big electric motor that comes sandwiched in between the gas engine and transmission. And that engine tends to turn on quite often. It's quite difficult to drive this vehicle just on electric power alone. Which brings us to the number 2 problem that I have with these SUVs, and that is the complexity of this hybrid system. See, unlike those other hybrids that I mentioned, which use a simple, naturally aspirated engine with an eCVT, one of the simplest transmission designs that you can get, and they also eliminate many other components, that's not the case when it comes to Hyundai and Kia's hybrid system. Hyundai and Kia instead decided to go with a more unique hybrid design, which uses a more complicated 1.6-liter turbocharged four-cylinder engine. And you not only have that turbocharger adding complexity, but you also have additional components such as drive belts and a conventional automatic transmission, all of which have been eliminated on those other hybrids. And while more complexity doesn't necessarily always mean more problems and less reliable, that brings us to the number 3 problem that I have with these two, which is Hyundai and Kia's reputation for reliability in general. Unlike those other brands like Honda, but especially Toyota, that have been making hybrids for decades now and have really proven that they know what they're doing, that's not quite the case with Hyundai and Kia. They just don't have that same longevity with hybrids. And this particular hybrid system that's used in these SUVs has only been around since 2021, so it doesn't really have that same proven longevity. And because Hyundai and Kia have a relatively shaky reputation when it comes to their reliability, with the past decade being filled with millions of their vehicles being recalled and countless engine failures, it's really tough to have the peace of mind in their products. So if you're the type of person that holds on to their vehicle as long as possible, upwards of 10 to 15 years, and you want to minimize your chance of having any major repair headaches, well, there are much safer hybrid options out there that you can go for instead. Now, that might not necessarily be as much of a concern if the pricing of these two was significantly lower than the competition, but unfortunately that is just not the case. Which brings me to the number 4 problem that I have with these two SUVs, and that is the pricing. Although they are competitively priced when compared to the other hybrid SUVs that you can buy, there's no question that the pricing can get up there, especially if you go for one of the higher trims. And that's not even mentioning the plug-in hybrid versions, which are only offered on the top trims and are around $5,000 more expensive than the equivalent regular hybrid, which to me just makes them way too much money. Now, I know there are those that'll say that, well, yeah, they might be a lot of money, but at least they both give you a lot more features and more technology when compared to other SUVs. And both also come with a class-leading warranty. You have a 5-year comprehensive warranty, and in the United States, both companies give you a 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty, which is impressive. But is all of that really enough to justify the high pricing? I'm not really sure that it is. And that brings me to the last criticism that I have with these two vehicles, which is a fairly minor one, but one that's still worth mentioning, and that is the user friendliness of some of the controls. Although the interior for the most part is very well designed, I do question some of the choices that these companies made. For example, you have the gear selector, which is a little bit finicky to use. On the Kia, it's a rotary knob, and on the Tucson, it's a column stalk, which is just a frustrating mess and very confusing, especially if you have a second vehicle with a conventional shifter. And then you have some of the controls, such as the touch controls that you get in the Kia, which again, you have to toggle back and forth, whether you want to have your climate functions or whether you want to adjust your sound system. Again, why did they have to do it like this? Ultimately, in almost every other way, both SUVs are basically the same vehicle and have the same advantages and downsides. But because of its slightly better control setup, the Tucson is the one that would be my choice. But ultimately, is it worth it to consider either one of these over other hybrid SUVs instead? Well, I think that really depends on what your priorities are. I think these two are really going to impress those that really value having top-notch design and performance. If you want to have a great driving SUV with plenty of power, if you're really impressed by technology and want to have all the latest features and gadgets, those are really the areas where these two vehicles really shine. But here's the thing, and something that I know all too well. It's nice to have all those fancy gadgets and gizmos, but after the first few months, or at least after the first year, a lot of that flashy stuff is going to wear off on you, at which point you're just going to want to have a well-designed, functional vehicle that works well is not going to give you headaches and is going to last a long time. At the end of the day, that's what really matters most. And I think if that's ultimately what you're looking for, given that you're not really saving much money by buying one of these two, it still makes a lot more sense to go for one of the other hybrid SUVs instead. Both the Honda CR-V Hybrid and the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid just offer unbeatable value for money. They are very well designed SUVs that are extremely well proven and have the most reliable drivetrains in the segment. Not to mention, they're also superior when it comes to fuel economy. And because of their reputations for quality and reliability, they're also going to have much better resale value in the long run. So ultimately, if you're looking for the best value for money SUVs, you are still better off buying either the CR-V or the RAV4. And I would also say the same about some of the other hybrids, such as the Subaru Forester Hybrid, which has a Toyota-inspired hybrid system, and the Mazda CX-50 Hybrid, which uses the exact same hybrid system straight from the RAV4. But again, I have to say, I have been incredibly impressed driving both the Kia and the Hyundai over the past week, and I know a lot of buyers who decide to choose one are going to feel the same way. What was once a significant gap has now narrowed significantly with their competitors, and they've actually surpassed the competition in many key areas, which explains why they've both now become so popular. So after watching this video, which one is it going to be? Would you consider buying either the Kia or the Hyundai, or would you still go for one of the other hybrids that I mentioned instead? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you are planning to purchase a vehicle and you live in Ontario, know that OMVIC is the vehicle sales regulator that's responsible for administering and enforcing the rules that dealerships must follow. To learn more about your consumer protection rights, just visit omvic.ca. And if you are planning to purchase a new vehicle and you need any expert advice, assistance, or support, make sure to visit carhelpcanada.com. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.